Evening all. So you've just started eFrontier and you're not sure what to do, right? This is a very quick guide on what to do. You start basically in the worst ship, which is this one. It's got one laser on it. Just go to a belt and start mining. Now you want to go and do it in this order. There are three types of ore. Common ore, that usually found in natural asteroid clusters. You have ferrous ore, which is usually found in metal rich. And you then have carbonaceous ore, which gives you carbon. That's it. That's it. So all you need to do, 3 ores. Head to probably the natural asteroid cluster first and get 100 or 150 units of common ore. Then you can do here. So you can drop refineries and you can drop a storage unit. This is what you basically want to do to begin with. This starts your journey. Now, the first thing you should be trying to do is to build really towards a reflex. The reflex is kind of the starter ship. That's something that you move to. I would highly recommend you do that. So that takes us then on to step 2, which is build. So from this point forward, you want to just go and find somewhere in the system that's relatively safe. My recommendation is stay in the starter system. Don't know why, it feels probably the safest thing to do. Ore constantly respawns, so you have no risk of running out of ore. This game is not kind to people. If you could find yourselves without carbonaceous ore, you are effectively stranded. We'll come back to that, but that's a really key point. And what you want to do is find somewhere like a moon. Zoom in at 100 meters away from the moon and then start dropping bits. You can do this at belts, but it makes you very risky if you do that. Plus, this solar system moves. So if you plant something here, next time you log in, it won't be there at the belt anymore. It'll be somewhere in space floating. So they're called Lagrange points. You don't have to necessarily go to them because that's where you build ultimately bases. At this starting point, all you really want to be doing is finding somewhere safe that's not easily kind of, noticeable, like a moon. Planets are a bit risky, but moons are a bit easier. But in starter systems, I've yet to be ganked. There are gankers, but I would say you'd be very unlucky to find one. And what you want to start doing is put down all the various things that you would expect to do at this stage. So printers, refineries, storage, and refuge. And what you want to really do is start mining all 3 of the ores and collecting them in your storage. Once you've done that, you can start to create fuel. So carbonaceous ore gives you basically carbon or carbonaceous materials. Water, which water is always turned into hydrogen fuel. That's the most important thing. So always remember that. That is by far why carbon is so important. You need, I would say, 1/3 of the amount of metal that you need of common ore because you turn that into reinforcing alloy and so on. So you start to basically build up on these various things. Now, once you're ready, a reflex, which is well provisioned, which you have mining lasers on, I wouldn't bother exploring with guns because there's just no point. What you're doing then is managing your fuel. Now, this is the trickiest part of eFrontiers. I cannot stress this enough, that you have to monitor your fuel. So as you jump from system to system, it takes an awful lot of fuel. Do not underestimate that. And what you're basically looking to do is to have a cargo hold full of fuel and a full tank and start jumping through the systems. And when you jump in, press F3, look at the system, take your time with this, don't rush it like I'm doing here. And you're looking for carbonaceous ore. Now, in your first jump, you don't need to panic too much, but after you've gone, let's say, and burnt half of your cargo hold of D1 fuel, I would say that that's time to start really paying attention. Have a notebook next to your desk, or do what I do here, which is you press N, you have the notepad in game, and start logging. You can drag drop the system into it so it's then easily referenceable. And I just put in next to it what I found there. This is really useful. Now, again, it's a survival game, so don't just think this is like COD and you're going to run through and respawn. You're not. You have to really think about how you're going to do this. Now, some people travel with common ore in their hold so that they can do exactly what I'm doing here, which is to drop a refinery and some storage. I tend not to do that. I would rather have the fuel because I think it's fair to say that common ore or natural asteroid groups are quite common. Carbonaceous ore originally wasn't, but is now more common. So you probably will have less of an issue now with it. And what you're looking to do is either head towards the nearest station. So go to M, press M, go to your map, and then go to the filters, little cogwheel in the top middle left. and select that under geography to station count, and you'll start to see, well, you'll certainly see the red dots of where your next station is. Aim to go to that station, because there's a number of things you can do at a station, and there's a number of risks involved with doing that. But for me, that was the first step to try and move towards. If you get out of fuel, if you get locked, just literally blow yourself up and start again. It's not that bad to do. So once you finally get to a keep, keeps are the only places that sell the lenses that you need to put into crude extractors that allow you to then go and basically mine rifts for the better fuels. That's something, again, that takes a bit of time. But if you find a rift in your exploration, take a note of it. Make sure you note that down, because that guarantee is going to be very useful to you in the future. But at this particular stage, what you're wanting to do is to move towards the gated network that stations tend to exist within. So stations have a number of systems connected via jump gates. It is riskier to be living there. I think the resources in those gated systems are no way near as good as well. So you just factor that in. Now, ultimately, your goal should be at the early start of the game to maybe get towards a gated system with a station in it, and then build a reaver. Once you've built a reaver, put 2 tier 3 coil guns on it, 2 shield enhancers, and then 1 bulwark shield generator. This, to me, it seems to work quite well. Post in the comments if you have a better fit than this. I know some people prefer armor tanking, but I found this so far to be the best way to then basically go an NPC, you go and rat. Now what you then do is you're looking for miner nests. You can do better, but I would start with a miner, because that's the most sort of challenging one at this stage when you've never done it before. And then what you're doing is killing and looting to get feral data. Feral data is the only thing you can sell for Lux, and the only way you can buy the lens, 3x lenses, which you need for your crude extractor to mine the rifts, is with Lux, and Lux is the equivalent of ISK. That's a lot of mouthful there, much like last time I was with your mum. But basically, what you want to do is to just start moving towards the keeps, building up that place. Now, what I would do, this is how I did it, is as I was traveling, you would come across systems where you'd be like, wow, that's a great system. You can see the systems I've been basically living in on the top right. You're welcome to come grief me or live with me. I don't care. There's loads of resources there, and it's pretty cool. But I would recommend you finding somewhere that you actually are quite comfortable with. Basically, the bigger the system, the more entities there tend to be there. Now, that could be wrong, but so far I think I am right in that. And what you want to then do is effectively build a base. Now, you then build bases at Lagrange points. You would build a network node. They're relatively easy to build, and also they're incredibly easy to fuel on D1 fuel. You need to be near carbonaceous ore. Carbonaceous ore is life. If you're nowhere near carbonaceous ore, don't settle there. Now, things do spawn and despawn. So, if there is, for example, like you see me here running a miner nest, once I completed this site, it then disappeared and gave space for something else to spawn. So think of that. There's a number of kind of slots in a system where something could spawn. A wrecked shipyard, an unanchored silo. It could be many different things, but what you're looking for is effectively a system that has all 3 ores, or at least near it. So for example, my system doesn't have all 3 ores, so that means it's not particularly desirable for a lot of people. But what it does have is an incredibly easy jump between 5-6 systems of only a few hundred units of fuel, and so you can basically jump back and forward. All of this, I would say, is done in the reflex. There is no point really having anything other than a reflex at the very start. Once you start to want to do NPCing, then a reaver is definitely worth getting, because you can see here, running my kind of dual restorer setup shield, I think it's quite good. It hits quite hard with the coil guns as well. So this is definitely, I would say, the starting point of the game. So what happens then? Well, once you've got to this point where you've built a base, you've started to... There is something I've yet to explain to you, which is building foam. Building foam sucks. It is the core resource to build the bigger structures in the game, and it takes an awful lot of resources. Those 3 resources are the 3 rocks. Basically, that's all you need to look for, is the 3, metal, carbon, and I've forgotten the other one, common ore. That's it. Those are the 3 that you need to get. Everything else is kind of addition to that. Once you start to produce the three, let's say, building blocks, which is carbon weave, reinforced alloy, and I can't remember, thermal composites or something like that. Those three things basically make everything from that point forward. So you just need to get very good at mining them. I'll give you an example. So carbon weave, you just go to a carbon ore belt, put 3 refineries down, put a printer down, and then put a storage unit down. So I think in total that's 50 carbonaceous ore, but you've already got that from the belt. And I think it's 200 common ore in your hold to do that. Once you've done that, you then can basically just sit, put some Netflix on, and just mine into the refineries about 450 units of carbonaceous ore, and then click go. And then move to the next one. And you basically cycle 3 refineries, and it works pretty well. I found that to be quite workable. Once you've done that for a while, you'll start to have enough carbonaceous or carbon material where you can then start to make carbon weave. It takes 3,100 and it takes a while. That's probably the most difficult one to do. Everything else is really actually quite straightforward. So in a reflex, you should put a cargo expander 2 on it, by the way. So it gives you a cargo of about 990 units. That means you can then warp to a common belt, or common ore belt, that's a natural asteroid, mine 2 full loads of that and 1 load of the metal ore, and bung that in a portable printer, and you've got the reinforced alloy. And then basically everything else is common ore to make feldspar, which is a processed refined in the medium refinery. So you do need a network node by this point. And then from that point, you just basically could produce silicon and carbonaceous ore to make the thermal component. That's it. That takes you to the middle of the test of this game so far. Everything I've just said there. So find a place which has those 3 belts, find something which has some NPCs, and then you start to unlock the kind of final bit of the game, which is you need to find rifts. You need to mine those rifts for salt, or to old and young crude. You then refine that into the better types of fuel, and it also starts the journey towards frigates. Now in this game, frigates require the better fuel. You can't run them on the hydrogen fuel. So you have to basically have something, you have to be ready for that. The production of a frigate as well is grindier than your mum at the club, and this is no understatement. To grind for a frigate will take probably a day or 2, maybe more. And is it worth it? Yeah, probably. But at the moment, there's not enough in the game to warrant maybe doing that. I would recommend it if you really get the first bit comfortable. You know, if you build a big base, don't worry to rush to frigates. Make sure the base is structured and strong. Don't bother with turrets. Turrets at this point, I don't think shoot on corp mates, and basically there's only 1 corp and you're all in it. Until somebody starts a corp for 1.5 million lux, which is not cheap, that's a lot of ratting. You can't leave the starter corp, and the guns won't fire on someone else in a starter corp. So you're just basically rolling the dice on this one. You're having to basically play the game with a view that someone could come find you and kill you. That's the game, though. It is a survival game, and so far I've met about 3 different people and not one of them has shot at me. In fact, it's almost like, you know, you meet someone in the middle of a field, you run away from each other, and it's quite interesting seeing how that works. There are ganks, it does happen, unfortunately. But I think the reflex is so easily replaceable. One of the things you can do with a network node is set it to be your spawn point. Don't forget to do that, so that if you die, you then respawn at your network node. I also would say it's not a bad idea to build the station up as well, so the station has a lot of resources within it. So that's something to think about. But to me, this becomes, you know, the middle of the game. You then have to decide if you want to sort of dedicate to the next step. Frigates tend to be, better than the corvettes which you're in now, but they are such a huge commitment and resources. I think a lot of people won't use them in any risky way. Whereas a reflex, you could just go PvP in one. They're easy to build. You can fit 1 gun to it and you can go and torment people. Even the recurve, which is a slightly better version of the reflex, and the reaver are actually quite easy to build. Once you've got into this kind of, you see how I'm doing it, the dual mining, well, bad footage here, but the dual mining sort of setup of the reflex means you can't constantly mine with the 2 lasers. You have to kind of juggle them a bit. But once you get that, you'll make so much ore very quickly that you'll have enough resources to replace any losses. bosses. One of the things to really build as well is the assembler. So the assembler is where all of your equipment is built. The printer M is a slightly different thing. Printer S is definitely worth building because you need that for certain provisions. The printer M is very much to give you the ability to build the frigates. So at this early stage, you maybe don't need to do that. We'll probably focus next video on frigate production in depth, but I think for this first one, it's to get, they've just opened up the game to everyone in Eve, so it's free to play. So hopefully this video is going to be of use to somebody, because certainly when I started playing it, it took days to learn all of these things. You could draw a line from the very moment you start in that wend to the where you are maybe about to start frigate production. It's almost like a journey, and it's the same steps. It's a process. So for example, I went exploring, I ran out of fuel. The only thing left to do was to blow myself up. I then respawned in a random starter system, and then within probably, I would say 2 hours, I was back to where I was and probably further beyond, because I knew, okay, I've started again. I go and mine the carbonaceous ore, I start getting some fuel, I start building the various building blocks, I start placing a base down. All of a sudden, I've got a network node with a printer S, with a refinery M. All of these things that basically feel like they should have taken ages to do. Actually, once you know what you're doing, they're very quick to do. And that's something that I really would stress is, it's exactly the sort of process to follow. It's like a flow that once you master that, you're then pretty much golden. And as you start to travel, what you'll start to experience is, okay, so, I could risk a jump, or I could actually go and get more fuel. 9 times out of 10, that let's go and get more fuel is the wisest thing to do. Now, if you set up a personal storage, it will be in your assets list, and you can then basically look for it and keep it in your notes. You can say there's a reserve of fuel here as well, which is really a very smart way to play the game. As you do various jumps, as you find carbonaceous ore, start to do my trick, 3 refineries, and a storage unit, and start to really produce fuel, the D1 fuel, and then leave it in your portable storage. Now, eventually after 3 days they pop, but you never know. It then helps someone else down the road. Think of it as paying forward. I also don't think it's too bad a thing to do that if you do find carbonaceous ore, you fill up your ship. If you have any spare, because there's always a case where you have like 1,000 D1 spare, leave it in a can, because someone coming to that in dire need will be very grateful for it. So there we go. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the very quick way to do this game. Post in the comments or join the Discord and come chat, because I am really loving this game, and I think we are going to start Corp. I'm currently working towards my first frigate, so I've basically been looking for rifts and doing that whole process. I've got to admit there's a lot here to enjoy, so I would seriously recommend giving it a go. It's free to play if you have an EVE Online account for 2 weeks, so please do consider trying it. But like I say, this is hardcore mode. This is EVE Online pro level, so you're going to die. Don't think you're going to join this and own the world. You have to really think as if this is the ultimate survival experience, which it certainly is. But there we go. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time.